But in this first month, he introduces us to the mind and said the mind is the master of the body, breath, and senses, though it is itself charged by the power of the center of consciousness, the individual soul. Makes a very strong comment here that's important to understand. One simply has to become aware of this fact, that the mind is in direct control of the senses, breath, and body. It is the mind that influences the senses and causes them to function in the external world. It is the mind that desires to perceive the world through the senses and to conceptualize and categorize those sensory perceptions. The mind stores such impressions in the unconscious, the storehouse of merits and demerits, and then it recalls them whenever it needs them. Another strong sentence here. All sadhanas, spiritual practices, techniques, and disciplines are actually means to train the mind. And the foremost part of the training is to make the mind aware that reality, capital R, reality, lies beyond itself, and that is the immortality of the soul. That's the most important thing that we need to train the mind. And then the mind comes to understand that ultimately its real job is to simply stand aside. And when it stands aside and gets out of the way, then that center of consciousness, the self, is there already, now standing alone, unencumbered by the activities of the mind. Easy concept. But important to know, maybe not quite so easy to do. The mind is a separate individual entity, but it does not have a separate existence. It exists only because of the existence of the soul. The mind is the finest instrument that we possess. If it is understood well, the mind can be helpful in our sadhana practices. However, if the mind is not well ordered and disciplined, it can distract and dissipate all of our potentials. Anything within the domain of the mind can be healed by the mind, once one knows his or her deeper nature. When the aspirant becomes aware of this fact, he or she can willfully heal or prevent the occurrence of those diseases that have their basis in malignancy. Then he goes into the four functions of mind, which he describes in great depth elsewhere. Here it's a sort of short summary. There are four distinct functions of mind: manas, buddhi, ahamkara, and chitta. Here's the instruction that goes with it. These four, two things. These four should be understood, and their functioning should be coordinated. Manas, chitta, ahamkara, and buddhi need to be coordinated. Manas is the lower mind, through which the mind interacts with the external world and takes in sensory impressions and data. So this mind employs the senses as tools to bring it in. Manas is the lower mind, through which the mind interacts with the external world and takes in sensory impressions and data. Mind also has the tendency to doubt and question, which can cause great difficulties if this tendency becomes excessive. When it's said that Manas has the tendency to doubt and question, it's because it's not the job of Manas to know the answer. It's the job of buddhi, which he talks about next. But it's not, it's like as Swamiji describes elsewhere, or possibly here, further in, the job of Manas is like a supervisor in a factory. The supervisor is in charge of supervising the employees, who are the senses. It's not the job of the supervisor to make the decisions of the factory. It's the job of somebody else. So when we say that the mind has a tendency to doubt and question, what it's really asking is, what should I do, boss? And if the boss isn't there, if the boss isn't doing its job, if intelligence, buddhi, isn't doing its job, then who's the supervisor going to listen to? Whoever's talking the loudest. listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And the supervisor, manas, mind, goes along with it. And off we go, getting into trouble. Buddhi is the higher aspect of mind. Buddhi, the doorway to inner wisdom. It has the capacity to decide, judge in the positive sense of assessing, and to make cognitive discriminations and differentiations. It can determine the wiser of two courses of action if it functions clearly and if manas will accept its guidance. So this intelligence, this buddhi, is the one that's supposed to be making the decisions, and manas is supposed to listen. Ahamkara is the sense of I-ness, the individual ego, which feels itself to be a distinct, separate entity. It provides identity to our functioning, but ahamkara creates our feelings of separation, pain, and alienation as well. Elsewhere, Swamiji points out that the really one bad habit of ahamkara is that it looks at everything and says, this is mine. This is me, and this is mine. And if it didn't do that, this same ego is very, very powerful and can be a part of the source of determination to do what we're doing. But it's not all bad. Chitta is the memory bank which stores impressions and experiences, and while it can be very useful, Chitta can also cause difficulties if its functioning is not coordinated with the others. Swamiji points out here that these functions are described in greater detail in The Art of Joyful Living. Just as an aspirant should care for and pay attention to the different functions of mind, so also should the student take care of his external behavior so that he does not acquire the diseases that are transmitted through unhealthy food, sex, or imbalanced ways of living. Cleanliness is valuable, but it should not become obsessive, because in order to function effectively, the immune system also requires a healthy mind. When we talk about purity of mind, that is actually achieved by ridding ourselves of negative, passive, and slothful mental tendencies. Such a healthy mind acquires confidence, and then buddhi judges, discriminates, and decides things on time. He mentioned a moment ago that we were to coordinate the various functions of mind. Now he tells us how. Not in great depth, but it gives us the very important clues of what to do. To establish coordination among the various modifications of mind, those four, manas, chitta, ahankara, and buddhi, one has to learn to watch the mind's functioning through actions and speech, and at the same time observe the thinking process within. So there's two major instructions in that sentence. One is watch the mind's functioning through actions and speech. And we all do this all of the time with relation to other people. We watch the gestures and body language of other people, right? And we draw inferences of what's going on with that person. We look at the person, we say, he looks really happy today. Or wonder what's wrong with her today. Why is she in such a bad mood? And we're watching the body language of the other person. When we see that in the other person, what is it that we're seeing? The body is animated by the mind. No part of the body is going to move at all without an instruction coming from the mind. So we can infer something by looking at the gestures and body language. Well, if we do this so easily with other people, we can do it ourselves. So it means literally exactly what it says. Watch the mind's functioning through our actions and speech. So if you're sitting there and you notice your hands are tapping, or your foot is tapping, or your knee is bouncing up and down, you can pause and recognize that's not happening by accident. You can ask yourself, internal dialogue, why is my knee moving like that? And somebody inside will answer. Well, because you're upset about something, 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 something. And you're not doing anything about it. And so something's trying to express itself. You won't express yourself externally in a proper sort of way, so what's the mind doing? It's sitting there just doing something like that.